Start with blinding. Any lab touching a suspected cohort gets samples coded by a third party. The coder can't see metadata, and the lab can't see the coder. Chain of custody runs like a relay. Tamper-evident bags, timestamp transfers, dual signatures at every handoff, and parallel custody logs stored with read-only hashes. If you can't defend your chain at 3 a.m. in front of a hostile auditor, you don't have data. You have stories. Pre-register the analysis before a single tube spins. Spell out hypotheses, thresholds, and statistical plans on a public registry. If we're hunting rare SNP clusters, say variants affecting vitamin D receptors, circadian clock genes, or calcium transporters, declare the specific loci and acceptable multiple comparison corrections. If we're probing post-event epigenetic marks, define the methylation sites, bisulfite sequencing platforms, and batch correction pipelines. For mitochondrial quirks, lay out which haplogroup branches are targets and why, then lock the scripts. No fishing expeditions disguised as confirmatory work. Targets should reflect the whispers we've heard without overfitting them. That means 3 baskets. Basket 1, stable genotype signals, SNPs in VDR, Cry1/2, PR3, CACNA1C, and vestibular-associated loci. Basket 2, epigenetic signatures plausibly transient after window nights, clock-controlled gene methylation, inflammatory pathway modulation, stress axis marks. Basket 3, phenotypic correlates that can be captured unobtrusively, sleep onset latency, balance tests, motion sickness thresholds, and light flicker sensitivity. Tie each basket to a priori thresholds. A single p-value below 0.05 won't cut it. We want convergent anomalies across independent modalities. Controls are where most hopeful claims die, so load them properly. Match cohorts by altitude, radiation background, age, sex, socioeconomic status, and chemical exposures. Near-range communities breathe different air, jet fuel residues, desert dust, odd EM environments, so measure them. Portable. Spectrometers for light spectra, Gauss meters for EM quiet, passive badges for VOCs and radiation, and building surveys for flicker-heavy LED profiles. If a control town shares the same environment minus the corridor window, and the anomalies vanish, you've learned something important. Randomization and rotation matter. If we suspect windows, schedule sampling across them without telling clinics which nights are flagged. Rotate couriers, labs, and even freezer bays to smoke out handling artifacts. Run spike-in controls and replicate across platforms. Microarrays and sequencing for methylation, 2 vendors for genotyping, 2 brands of balance rigs for vestibular tests. Disagreements are the point. Consilience, not perfection, is the standard because viral claims collapse under single lab certainty but survive multi-lab convergence. Citizen science can carry part of this if it grows a spine. Families can collect saliva, hair, and finger-pricked dried blood spots using standardized kits with pre-labeled blinded IDs. Wearables can export raw sleep and HRV data, but route them through a neutral escrow that strips identifiers before labs see files. Publish the full protocol, version it, and let critics hammer it in public. Recruit 2 academic partners who don't like each other to run identical pipelines on duplicate aliquots. If both see the same bend, you've cleared the first serious hurdle. Success criteria should be boring and stubborn. Effect sizes that replicate across sites, time points that align with pre-registered windows, and anomalies that survive ruthless confound checks. A win could look like this: modest enrichment of specific VDR and PER3 variants in lineages mapped to corridors, a repeatable, small shift in methylation at clock-linked CpGs in newborn spots collected within defined windows, and a statistically tighter distribution of balance scores in children from flagged families, using identical hardware across 3 clinics. None of these headlines will go viral. That's good. Truth buys its own ticket without fireworks. Data custody has to outrun pressure. Store raw instrument files in append-only repositories with public checksums. Separate keys for decoding sample IDs live with a third-party custodian. Think a civil liberties clinic or a university library, so no single actor can unblind alone. Publish negative results alongside positives. Register every deviation from protocol in a visible log. If a courier missed a handoff by an hour, log it. If a freezer warmed 3 degrees, log it. The absence of messy notes is a red flag. Finally, decide in advance what would falsify the claim. If matched controls sharing the same environment show equal anomalies, the corridor link weakens. If epigenetic marks don't track windows after 2 cycles, we stop calling them windows. If lineage effects vanish after deduplication and kinship correction, we retire that map. Extraordinary claims don't just need evidence, they need exits. The fastest way to earn trust is to build a protocol that can prove you wrong and then survive it long enough to matter. Perspectives collide, skeptics, believers, and the middle path. While protocols tighten and measurements sharpen, the room splits into 3 camps that rarely hear each other. The skeptic thesis sounds like this: you're seeing the exhaust of black programs, not visitors. PsyOps and classified biomed can generate lights in the sky, etiquette in hangars, and pilots in hospitals. The goal isn't mystique, it's masking. Create a folklore that absorbs anomalies so programs breathe without protests or FOIAs connecting the dots. If newborn blood spots bend through odd channels, that's a dual-use genomics pipeline feeding national preparedness, not a corridor for non-human sampling. From their perspective, every alleged visitor preference has a mundane twin. Dim lights? Standard sensor hygiene for visual testing and neonatal comfort. Buffers? Range safety and infection control. Windows? Logistics. They point to redactions as heat shields around sources and methods, not conspiracies. To anomalous signature memos as engineering notes, not cosmic diaries. They say the family's microstories are memory plus culture meeting the stress of living near ranges, where sleep breaks, power flickers, and night workers normalize rituals that look like etiquette. Believers hear all that and shrug. They've collected too many consistent details across decades and geographies to file it under coincidence. The timing of White Room asks, the mirrored language between desert briefings and neonatal SOPs. The way don't chase rules show up next to hangar whispers about heat shimmer. Those are signatures of an interaction. They don't need a treaty PDF, they see behavior. Accommodation asked, accommodation granted, and when pressed, courtesy reciprocated. They note that household countermeasures change outcomes in ways PsyOps wouldn't bother to honor. Courtesy is hard to fake at scale, unless something on the other end is responding. The middle path stitches both into a less comforting picture, human programs and non-human opportunism coexisting. In this telling, black projects build corridors and secrecy norms for their own aims. Those same corridors create predictable, low-noise environments, dark, quiet, scheduled, where a patient actor can sample without tripping alarms. Human institutions, already primed to compartmentalize, mistake one stream for the other, or decide not to distinguish because the operational posture, minimize disruption, guard the seam, works for both. The result is a Venn diagram that looks like fog, where defense, health, and contact overlap, policy protects the overlap, not the origin. Here's where skeptics concede ground without yielding the thesis. They'll admit the dual-use genomics landscape is messy, the consent language often thin, and the data pipelines too hungry for comfort. They agree that families deserve sharper guardrails and clearer opt-outs regardless of what you believe about visitors. They even accept that some aerial events don't map neatly to adversary tech or atmospheric tricks. But they stop at attribution. Extraordinary claims need extraordinary proof, and the labs haven't delivered it yet. Believers push back with convergences. Independent analysts who didn't know each other landed on the same seasonal validation spikes, the same courier rhythms, the same sleep behavior quirks in base-adjacent zip codes. Clinicians who never traded notes described the same laminated buffer instructions and the same liaison cadence. FOIA bodies differ, yet produce the same silhouette, aerial, unconventional performance, next to biomedical operational flexibility. When different rivers carve the same canyon wall, they say, stop calling it rain. The middle path treats convergence as smoke, not flame. It argues for tests that can falsify the romance. That's why blinding, pre-registration, and hostile replication matter. If the patterns are artifacts of stress, altitude, or LED flicker, they'll collapse when matched controls share those exposures. If they persist after ruthless confounds, skeptics lose daylight. Believers win something stronger than mood boards. And institutions, whichever ones, face a narrower lane for euphemism. Unknown to most, a parallel fight is policy, not proof. Dual-use genomics rules are tightening in public, more disclosures, better consent, while national security carve-outs quietly expand. Both camps read those moves as validation. Skeptics see responsible modernization. Believers see the scaffolding of an accommodation that can't be named. The middle notes the timing. Reforms spike after cluster events, then stall when crises fade. Bureaucracy breathes like a lung, the seam stays protected. Human stakes cut through the rhetoric. Families don't inhabit theses. They live in nurseries and corridors. A parent who refuses a midnight add-on isn't auditioning for either camp. They're drawing a line under fatigue. A nurse who demands a study number isn't adjudicating contact. She's enforcing ethics. The middle path embraces that posture. It says protect consent first, measure hard, and let attribution lag behind behavior until the data can carry it. Here's where it gets practical. The skeptic's best contribution is rigor, protocols that hammer bias and kill sloppy romance. The believer's best contribution is persistence, longitudinal logs, micro details only lived experience catches. The middle's job is orchestration, bridging hostile labs, locking chains of custody, and defending participants from retaliation while the work runs. None of that solves the mystery. All of it shrinks it, so the camps collide and sometimes cooperate. A skeptic biostatistician designs the pre-registration. A believer family supplies blinded samples. A middle path ethicist guards the keys and audits the chain. If convergence survives that triangle, the story moves. If it breaks, we retire a chapter and keep the guardrails, because the ethics were never contingent on the visitors being real. The seam still needs watching. The clipboard still needs a box that defaults to no unless a parent says yes, wide awake, under lights they control. Crisis point. A cluster event forces exposure. It started with a spreadsheet no one meant to create. A county epidemiologist flagged an unusual blip. 5 newborns in 1 week with borderline markers that didn't belong together. Calcium just high, bilirubin oddly steady, and a protein expression hovering outside a tight variance. She checked instrumentation. Clean. She cross-checked neighborhoods. 3 families lived under the same westbound flight path that skirted a restricted corridor. She wrote likely coincidence in her notes and opened a new column. Time of birth exact. While that was happening in the hospital, a courier's schedule shifted. The night driver who usually arrived on Thursday showed up Tuesday, then again Friday. Always just after 2 a.m. nurses noticed because the cooler case changed. New seals, a different handheld, same laminated chain of custody line. In the lab, a familiar validation flag lit the LIS. Secondary check, expedited. The technologist reran controls. The instruments were fine. The pattern wasn't. 3 days earlier, something else occurred. A mother in the maternity ward refused a second heel prick at 1:55 a.m. The resident said quality control. She said the first screen was clean, and they could draw in daylight. The liaison leaned in with the smile nurses knew too well. 10 minutes, he said, and we're gone. She kept the bassinet close, hand on the blanket, voice steady. No research tonight. The liaison left. At 2:13 a.m., the hallway lights dimmed 2 notches. Unknown to them, across town, a reporter got an email with a subject line that shouldn't exist in plain text. Validation spike urgent. The sender was a pediatrician who'd had enough of pilot euphemisms. He attached redacted screenshots, order sets with codes that didn't map to diagnoses, courier logs with external vendor IDs, and an audit trail showing an out-of-state IP verifying births at 2:07, 2:29, and 2:41 a.m. Public health won't touch it, he wrote. They say national security. By morning, phones lit up. The county health department launched an audit under the safest frame. Possible contamination, instrument drift, or reagent lot issues. Administrators convened a huddle. The liaison produced letters from a state office, citing a multi-site study with emergency preparedness relevance. The chief nursing officer asked for a study number she could put in the chart. The liaison offered a code name. She slid the paper back. Competing narratives snapped into place. Hospital PR drafted language about a routine review following anomalous laboratory results. The state's public health office prepared a memo about a targeted quality assurance effort. In neighborhood text threads, parents who'd compared notes for months wrote what they always suspected: the window's open. Sleep logs filled with 2 a.m. wakes. One father screenshot his smart thermostat, a consistent 1-degree drop at 2:12 a.m. for 3 nights, then normal. He'd never set such a program. Media descended because the pediatrician wouldn't retract. On camera, he refused to speculate about visitors and stuck to medicine. Panels were added without clear clinical justification, he said. External access to birth logs occurred without an emergency declaration. Parents deserve explicit consent. He held up a consent form with residual blood spot retention in small print and said, "This isn't enough." The institutional scramble frayed the edges. Emergency memos flew between agencies. One email, later released with black bars thick as winter, showed a subject line intact. Interagency coordination, neonatal windows. Bodies withheld. The attachments disappeared under exemptions. A county attorney asked the hospital to pause all non-essential add-on panels until IRBs were named. Administration agreed for 48 hours, then extended it when nurses said the requests hadn't stopped. Then something unexpected happened. A fragment escaped redaction. In a FOIA bundle about IT audits, a single line survived. External verification events correlate with designated low illumination time blocks. No originator named. No definition of designated. It was enough. The paper published the line. The story jumped state lines. Meanwhile, families made moves. One mother who'd refused a second draw stood her ground when a friendly research coordinator called with a follow-up that sounded like care. "We'll see you in clinic if there's a problem," she said. Another family, 3 generations deep in the corridor, posted their logs. Wake times, power dips, infant heart rate blips. They redacted names and addresses, left the timestamps raw, and asked a data-savvy cousin to post the files with checksums. The thread filled with matching patterns from 2 towns over. Behind closed doors, jurisdiction fights got blunt. The hospital's compliance team pressed the state for clarity on residual blood spot custody. The state cited statute and pointed to vendor agreements. Defense liaisons asked for operational flexibility during ongoing evaluation. The hospital insisted on parents present for all neonatal access that wasn't emergent. The liaison frowned. The policy held. In the aftermath, trust fractured. Parents filed destruction requests for stored blood spots where law allowed it. Clinicians demanded study identifiers and charts, or no samples left the building. Public statements hedged, no contamination found, instruments validated, patient safety ensured. The county epidemiologist, the one who opened the spreadsheet, published an anonymized analysis. The cluster existed. The markers aligned in time more than phenotype. She didn't name causes. She didn't use the word window. The sliver that survived, the FOIA line, the audit timestamps, the visible courier shifts, didn't solve the mystery. They did something else. They made silence wobble. When the blackout curtains fluttered, you could see the room behind them. Not clearly, just enough to know it isn't empty. What we can say, what we can't, and what matters. Here's where we land after the cluster and the wobble. We can say recurring descriptive patterns exist. Nurses in separate hospitals described the same dimming, buffer language, and late-night pilots. Labs saw the same validation flags bloom on the same nights. Families inside corridors logged similar wake times, temperature dips, and calmer outcomes under darker, cooler rooms. Those aren't one-off anecdotes, they're repetitions across years and zip codes. We can also say institutions guard the scene. FOIA bodies arrive with the same silhouette, unconventional performance in the air next to operational flexibility in biomedical flows. Vendor layers blur custody. Redactions thicken exactly where flight meets blood. Policy allows it. Dual-use genomics frameworks legitimize retention and secondary use while carve-outs preserve national security discretion. That posture isn't rumor. It's in memos, contracts, and the way liaisons move at 2 a.m. We can say public pipelines already enable quiet monitoring. Newborn screening captures near-universal baselines. Residual blood spots sit in archives by default in many states. Consumer wearables export sleep and HRV to clouds that integrate with wellness platforms. Military resilience programs add their own data.